Hello, everyone. It's Royce here, and I want to welcome you all to the Royce in the House YouTube channel. Tonight, folks, we're going to be talking about an iconic guitarist, Randy Rhoads. And it's a hell of a story here. And I want to say to a couple of people that have already joined the chat, Chris Elliott, Caitlin Stoddard, I just put another link up. You're all welcome to join me up here. Come on up. Let's talk about Randy Rhoads. And get through this story. You know, there's been so much written about this. You know, it's been a number of years since Randy died at the young age of, tragically, at the young age of 25 years of age in an airplane crash. We're going to get into all of that. What I'm going to do first, so much has been written. There's been documentaries made. There's been books by various people that were made. There's such a huge body of information out there. We could be here for 8 hours if we tried to cover even half of it. So to tell you the truth, I'm just going to pick a lane right down through the middle of all of it and just do a quick overview. Then we'll drop back and discuss some of parts of it in more detail. Hello, Angela. Great to see you. Thanks for showing up. We're going to be talking about Randy Rhoads. Man, I love Randy Rhoads' music. So we're going to start going through it right now, okay? You know, Randall William Rhoads was born in December of 1956 in Santa Monica, California, and died in a plane crash in March of 1982. He was a co-founder of the original guitarist for the heavy metal band Quiet Riot, and the guitarist and co-songwriter for Ozzy Osbourne's first two solo albums. You know, Ozzy had just been fired by, hey, Music Sanctuary, good to see you, brother. Got a link up. Anybody's welcome to join me. We'll just bring you right on if you want to come on. And I just put it up again. So anyway, so as I was saying, you know, Ozzy Osbourne had actually just been fired by Black Sabbath. And he was really depressed. He was drinking a lot. He was taking drugs a lot. And so he thought he'd give it a shot to try to put another band together. Okay. And so anyway, so you know, like I said, I'm just going to do a quick overview and then we'll drop back. Steve Midtham, how you doing, brother? Good to see you. Then we'll drop back and cover some of these parts in more details, okay? So, as I said, he was co-founder of the original guitarist in the heavy metal band Quiet Riot, and guitarist and co-songwriter with Ozzy Osbourne on his first two solo albums, The Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. And these are great albums. And in fact, I got to show off a little bit of stuff here. I've got my Blizzard of Oz picture disc that I've got in a frame here. And I was really surprised just how well this picture disc played. A lot of people say they don't play very well. This one plays very, very well. And the other one I want to show is I was given a bunch of albums. There were 22 albums, and they'd been in a flooded storage unit. And this is one of the ones that was in a flooded storage unit. You can see the damage on the bottom down here along the bottom. And actually, when you open it up, you can actually smell a little bit of mold still inside the cover. But I did pick up another copy of Diary of a Madman, and it's a beautiful album too. I'll pull it out real quick, guys. Bear with me. This show's going to take a while tonight. This one I got I think it was Black Friday the year before last, and it's a marbled blue, and it just really plays wonderfully. It's just a great album. Okay, let me put that away before I hurt myself. Okay, so those are my Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman albums. Okay, so Randy Rhoads, both of his parents were actually music teachers. Now, they got divorced when he was very young, and him and his two siblings, brother and sister, were raised by the mother. Just the mother was there, okay? And he had a brother named Kel. Now, I say Kel, and I don't know whether it's Kel or Kelly. Let's see. Someone's trying to join us here. And, okay, I've got people coming on now. Look at that. It's Caitlin Stoddard. Caitlin Stoddard. Chris Elliott. Hey, how you guys doing?
We're good. I'm good.
Okay, well, thanks for joining me, guys.
Sure.
So we're going to get into, like I said, there's such a huge body of information out there about, the life of Randy Rhoads, the death of Randy Rhoads, and everything that transpired in between. There's documentaries, multiple books have been written by various people that were close to the scene. So what we're looking at here now is, like I said, I'm just going to try to pick a lane and run down through the center of the whole thing, and then come back after doing that, and we'll pick apart a few things in more detail. So, like I was saying, both of his parents were music teachers. His brother was also a musician. His name was Kell. And I don't know whether it's Kell or Kelly, but it wasn't spelled in the traditional sense of a Kelly, Kelly. It's Kelle. So I'm just going to say Kell unless somebody corrects me. Okay, all three children were raised by their mother. She had received a bachelor's degree in music from UCLA and had played, piano professionally. And then she also opened in North Hollywood a music school called Musonia, 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 to help support the family in addition to teaching. Okay. So Rhoads listened to the Beatles. He listened to the Rolling Stones as a child. And he would go out into the garage and perform with his brother and try to copy the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. At the age of 7, he went to his mother's music school to learn classical guitar. And within a short period of time, he decided he wanted to learn rock guitar. So he told his mom he wanted rock guitar lessons. So within a very short period of time, and this blew my mind when I read it, the actual rock instructor that was teaching Randy Rhoads went to Randy Rhoads' mother, the owner of the school, and said, I can't teach your son any longer. He already knows more than I know. I mean, isn't that amazing? So Caitlin, you said you were a Randy Rhoads fan, right?
Well, I'm familiar. I'm
Oh,
familiar with.
familiar. Yeah.
I'm still learning regardless, but I'm familiar
Right.
with Quiet Riot for sure.
Yeah, right. How about you, Chris?
I love his Ozzy stuff.
Yeah,
I've
and
only
you know
heard
what?
a
I
little
can
bit of his.
totally relate to that because
Right.
I don't have a single Quiet Riot album, and I have never owned one.
I heard a song from it a couple years ago on YouTube, a video, but it wasn't a very good
Okay.
quality video. So I know he was
Okay.
16 when he formed the band.
Right. That's right. Well, he also took piano lessons from his mother to help build his understanding of music theory. Okay. He was originally educated in classical guitar. So this combined, these were the early influences. He combined them with the heavy metal, helping form a subgenre later known as neoclassical metal. Okay, he reached his peak. Like I said, I'm just going to run right down the middle of this, and then we'll come back and look at some things in more detail. He reached his peak as his guitarist for Ozzy Osbourne's solo career. As I previously mentioned, Ozzy had just been fired by Black Sabbath and was really, really at the lowest point of his life. Didn't even know if he wanted to live anymore, drinking, drugging. And then he started auditioning people to play in a new band. Didn't even know what he was going to call it yet. Okay, so the highlights of Randy's career with Ozzy Osbourne, with these two albums I just showed, The Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. Rhoads is regarded as a pivotal figure in metal music, okay, credited with pioneering a fast and technical style of guitar soloing. He largely defined the metal scene of the 80s. He helped popularize various guitar techniques now common in heavy metal, including two-handed tapping that Eddie Van Halen was known for, tremolo bar dive bombing, and intricate scales and patterns, drawing comparison to his contemporary Eddie Van Halen. And I don't know how many people really knew this, but him and Eddie, they weren't friends. I mean, it's kind of weird, but there was a real rivalry there. Okay. And I mentioned that, in the title of my show. Okay. So the Jackson Rhoads guitar was originally, commissioned by Randy. But anyway, so getting on down. Okay. So Rhodes's future bandmate Kel Garney, while attending middle school in Burbank, California, Rhoads taught Garney how to play the bass guitar, and together they formed a band called, of all things, The Whore. Well, that's a teenage boy. That's a teenage boy right there for you, right?
Oh my gosh.
Band called The Whore. Okay, rehearsing during the day at Rodney Bingham's English Disco, a '70s Hollywood night spot. It was during this period that hold on one second, folks. I gotta adjust my screen a little bit.
You're fine.
It was during this period that he wanted to learn lead guitar. To that point, according to his buddy Garney, he taught to play bass. Randy didn't know how to play lead guitar yet, so he started to take lessons for it, and really just riffing around, said Garney. Rhoads spent several months playing at backyard parties around the Los Angeles area in the mid 1970s. Okay, and the pair formed a cover band called the themes of some of these bands. Of course, the Beatles is a funny name too. They formed a cover band called Violet Fox with Rhoads' older brother Kel on drums. Okay, so you had Garney on bass, Randy Rhoads in leads, and Randy's brother Kel on drums. Okay, Violet Fox, which was together for approximately 5 months, staged several performances in the Grand Salon at Musonia, his mother's music school. Among their set list was Mississippi Queen by Mountain.
Oh,
Yeah. Songs from the I know that was good, wasn't it? Songs from the Rolling Stones, Alice Cooper, David Bowie. After Violet Fox dissolved, Rhoads formed various other short-lived bands. Okay, well, eventually they started coming out with a lot of live bootleg recordings, and they're still coming out to this day. Okay, I initially didn't like the lives that much, and the more I listened to them, the more I liked them, because it gave the artists opportunities to improvise. A good example of that is Jimi Hendrix, when he turned in his first batch of songs for the Jimi Hendrix Experience. They told him, no, this will never fly. You'll never be able to sell a song longer than 3 minutes. So Jimmy went back and cut all those songs down to 3 minutes. And God only knows, until you see him live, you don't know how much awesome improvising of solos and stuff had to be cut out to meet what they were saying the standard had to be. We've got Dan Goucher, Vinyl Gorilla Records, Zep Pearl, my brother, Zep Pearl. You know what, guys? And Dusty Spins. Hey, I'm gonna put up.
Hi, Dusty.
I just put up another link. Anybody that wants to join us, get on in here.
Hey, come on, join us.
So anyway, okay, so they started listening to the live bootlegs, right? And Rhoads began to take notes of the difference between the studio recordings and the live versions, particularly the different guitar licks incorporated, which was what I was just talking about. Different guitar licks that were incorporated when playing live. He began to memorize all these licks and taught himself to play them. Rhoads was a lot like Eddie Van Halen. I mean, they could hear something once and pick up on it. Eddie maybe a little more so. But Rhoads' brother states that they went to an Alice Cooper concert in 1971. Kate will like this story, at the Long Beach Auditorium, and the pair, it was a defining point in the guitarist's life. Okay, after the concert was over, Randy was mesmerized. He sat catatonic, just staring at the stage. This is Coop, Kate, just staring at the stage. Later that night, Randy said, "I can do this. I can look like this. I can be this." Something just clicked after watching that Alice Cooper concert. He was just like almost in a trance. And it kind of showed him what he could do with his talent. Okay. Rhoads' discovery of Alice Cooper was an absolute game changer. The guitarists, Glenn Buxton, Mick Ronson, Leslie West, were early influences on his playing. Okay. What was behind Randy Rhoads' rivalry with Eddie Van Halen? So let's see who else has joined us. Like I mentioned already, we've got Zep Pearl, we've got Dusty Spins, Angela's here, Vinyl Gorilla Records. Thank you all so much. Randy Rhoads is the topic. We're gonna, like I've said to the guys here already, guys and gals, there's such a huge body of work out there on this whole Randy Rhoads career that we're gonna take a line straight down the middle and then come back and get into a little more detail on certain things. Okay, so the Los Angeles rock scene was competitive in the early 70s, late 70s, I should say, and early 80s, especially among the young guitarists eager to impress with their chops, right? Okay. I can certainly relate to that. Eddie Van Halen famously soloed with his back. I didn't know this. Eddie Van Halen, Dr. Rick, how you doing, brother?
Hey, Dr. Rick.
Eddie Van Halen soloed with his back to the audience. He didn't want anybody to pick up on his technique, how he was doing it, and become famous doing it before he had a chance to become famous doing it himself. Eddie says about Randy Rhoads. Yeah, well, he was good. He was good. Eddie says of Randy, but I don't think he did anything that I haven't done. There ain't nothing wrong with it, man. I mean, I've copied other people. Well, Ozzy kind of took exception to that. Speaking to Rolling Stone, Ozzy defended his former bandmate, who he credits. Ozzy credits Randy Rhoads with saving his life. He was really at a low point in his life when Randy Rhoads came along and wound up being hired. But anyway, he said Randy wouldn't have taken anything from Eddie, not if he could help it. Okay, so speaking to okay, so anyway, to be honest, Randy didn't have a nice thing to say about Eddie, Ozzy recalled. Maybe they had a falling out or whatever, but they were rivals, okay? Randy's feelings about Eddie were not well hidden. In fact, his Quiet Riot bandmates used to take pictures of Eddie Van Halen and tape them onto his wah-wah pedal. So when he went over to hit his wah-wah pedal with his foot, you'd have to look at Van Halen. So he probably stomped on it pretty hard. But, Eddie and David Lee Roth used to come in and watch Quiet Riot play. Especially in the beginning, they came actually rather regularly. But according to numerous sources, including Quiet Riot's manager, Randy would never go watch them play. They came and watched him play, but he wouldn't go watch him play. Okay, and Randy was completely different. He didn't want to conceal his technique. Randy was like a teacher. He wanted everybody to see what he was doing. You could just tell when you looked at the way he was interacting with the audience. He was trying to teach, and that's what made him, he stood on stage, the way he would focus on the audience. He was definitely teaching and sharing, as opposed to Eddie, who turned his back to the audience so they wouldn't see just exactly how he was doing the things he was doing. Randy had lots of opinions about music beyond his guitar. His brother Kel Rhoads recalls that Randy considered Randy considered canceling his audition with Ozzy, noting that he didn't much care for Black Sabbath in the first place, or Ozzy's famous knuckle tattoos, which he described as being stupid. Okay, so hey, I'm just looking at the chat here for a minute. Royce, it's a party in Royce's house as normal. Yeah, hey, good seeing everybody. We'll continue here. You know what? I've got a couple of pictures I could share real quick.
Okay, do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna share a couple of pictures before we continue, because this is kind of a long story here. All right. Well, here we have Randy Rhoads,
Nice.
Ozzy, and Eddie Van Halen. Here we have a couple of albums that I've shown already: Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman, and a 1977 Quiet Riot album. One of, I think, three that Randy Rhoads played on. Okay, so I'll come back. I have a couple of more pictures, but we'll continue on here first. Okay, so where were we? Okay, okay. So Randy's friend Jim McNair also spoke about the Rhoads Van Halen rivalry in Randy Rhoads' Reflections of a Guitar Icon. Like I was saying, there's just so much information out there.
That's cool.
We would have to read 6 books on the show to cover it all. Van Halen's rivalry. Okay. in the reflections of a guitar icon. This was the year of guitar heroes. To a large degree, bands were judged on their guitar player. I think all the guitar players kind of kept up on each other to see what the other guys were doing, you know. In his biography, The 9 Lives of Ozzy Osbourne, Ozzy stated his first meeting with Randy Rhoads was after his departure from Black Sabbath. I knew instantly that there was something special. He was like a gift from God. Okay, let me get rid of this picture. What am I doing here? Sorry, folks. I left a picture
Yeah, you're
up.
fine. Don't worry about it. You're doing great, boy.
I left the picture up. Okay, there we go. All right. Let's get back to comments here now. Okay. He was like a gift from God, Ozzy said. Ozzy actually credits him with saving his life. I mean, that's how low Ozzy was after being fired. You know, he said it was like a gift from God. We worked so well together. You know, Randy and I were like a team. One thing that he gave me was hope. This is Ozzy talking. He gave me hope. He gave me a reason for carrying on, Ozzy added. He had patience with me. I guess Ozzy needed a lot of patience at that time with the drinking and drugging. He had patience with me. He was great. He was great to work with. He pulled the best out of me. We had a lot of fun, says Ozzy. Rhoads' death had a tremendous impact on Osbourne's life. I lost a dear friend in my life. I miss him terribly, Ozzy said. I just bathed my wounds with alcohol and drugs. The day that Randy Rhoads died was the day a part of me died, Ozzy said. And we're gonna actually get into this in a little more detail in a little bit here. Rhoads was inducted into the Hall of Fame by Morello, who stated in a video message, Randy Rhoads is a peerless talent. He revived Ozzy Osbourne's career as his gunslinger sideman. And it was Randy Rhoads' poster that I had on my wall. You could study Randy's songs in a university level musicology class and bang your heads to them at a 7-Eleven parking lot. That's a silly statement. Okay, so you know, also offering a video tribute was Metallica's Kirk Hammett. Okay, who
I love him.
stated, oh, I know, who stated about Randy's death. All of a sudden, the curtain came down unexpectedly, and the show was over before it really got going. Okay, while Zach Wilde, who spoke highly about his predecessor, Randy Rhoads, with Ozzy, saying, Randy, hands down, and I love this one here, sits at the round table of greatness in the Hall of Fame alongside Jimi Hendrix, my favorite, Jimmy Page, my co-favorite, okay,
Yeah.
Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton, both who I love, and Eddie Van Halen, okay. Rhoads played on Osbourne's seminal records, as we've already talked about, and I showed my copies, Blizzard of Oz, Diary of a Madman. And his death was just a huge shock to the world. And Ozzy wrote in his autobiography, I Am Ozzy, that he almost quit music after Randy's death. I mean, that's how, you know, strong he felt about Randy. Shortly after Rhoads' induction into the Hall of Fame, it was, you know, Ozzy announced to Rolling Stone, I knew him for a short amount of time, but what he gave me in that short amount of time was immeasurable in fucking greatness. To get somebody like Randy Rhoads to play on 2 albums, and those 2 albums to sound as good as the day they were recorded is something else. I'm forever in gratitude to that. God only knows where that man would be today. The very fact that he's not here to breathe the air is a fucking crime. Thank God he's getting recognized at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He finally got there in the end. I'm sad that his mother was not alive to see it, because he was so close to his mom. It shows that he's not been forgotten, you know. He was dedicated, he was a dedicated true musician, and he was a lovely guy, and I think about him all the time. That's Ozzy. And
That's
like I was
beautiful.
saying, Yeah, no, it is awesome. There's just like I said, there's so many books written, from different people, whether it's Ozzy or other bandmates. At the age of 16, Randy Rhoads and Kelly Garney, his friend from middle school that he taught to play the bass, uh, um, Rhoads began teaching guitar at his mother's school during the day and playing gigs at night. He graduated from his mother's school during the day and playing gigs at night. I'm sorry. He graduated from Burbank High School, participating in a special program that allowed him to condense his studies and graduate early so he could teach guitar and pursue music full time. Okay. Recruiting lead vocalist Kevin DeBrow and drummer Drew Forsythe, the band soon changed its name to Quiet Riot. We're getting into a little more detail now, okay? Quiet Riot quickly became one of the most popular acts at the Los Angeles club circuit, and by late 1976 had secured a record deal with CBS Sony Records. Fans began showing up at Quiet Riot shows wearing polka dots, emulating the polka dot vest and bow ties that Rhoads wore on stage. Uh, he also had a polka dot flying V-style guitar custom made by a local luthier. Okay. Well, the band had a strong following in Los Angeles. Quiet Riot released only in Japan, Quiet Riot 2 was only released in Japan. The relationship between DeBrow and Garney had been deteriorating completely during the recording of the band's second album, with potentially catastrophic results. After drunkenly firing a handgun through the ceiling and engaging in a fist fight with Rose, Garney hatched a plan to shoot and kill DeBrow at the record plant studio while recording the album. Rhoads was left with no choice but to fire his longtime friend and co-founder, Garney. Garney wanted to shoot him. God, unbelievable. Okay, so in 1979, former Black Sabbath vocalist Ozzy Osbourne was in Los Angeles attempting to form a new band. An acquaintance of Randy Rhoads from an LA club circuit, future Slaughter bassist Dana Strum, we all know who Dana Strum is, phoned Rhoads relentlessly to coax him into auditioning. Rhoads initially told Quiet Riot bandmates Rudy Sarzo that he was not really interested in audition, but finally agreed to simply to shut Strum up. Rhoads got the call for the audition before the final show with Quiet Riot in September of '79. The day before Osbourne was scheduled to return to England, Rhoads agreed to audition for Osbourne in a Los Angeles studio. Okay, and the audition was kind of weird. Rhoads brought his Gibson Les Paul and a practice amp and started warming up. Okay, Osbourne, who was very drunk, said of the audition, he played this fucking solo, and I'm like, am I that fucking stoned, or am I hallucinating, or what the fuck is this? Osbourne has maintained that he immediately gave him the job. Rose recalled later, I just turned up and did some riffs. And he said, you've got the gig. I had the weirdest feeling because I thought, you didn't even hear me play yet. I was just warming up. I just think that shit's hilarious, It's so rock and roll. A drunken guy hears him warm up and hires him, and look what they created later. Okay, so according to Rhoads' own account, it was Strum who emerged from the. I'm sorry.
Excuse me, I was yawning. You're good.
Okay.
You're good.
According to his own account, it was Dana Strum from Slaughter, or soon to be Slaughter, who emerged from the control room to inform him that you have the job. Rhoads was scheduled to meet Ozzy the following night in his hotel room. In the year following, Osbourne has maintained that his first encounter with Rhoads and the subsequent audition took place the following day at the hotel. And it seemed that in his inebriated state, he combined the two events in his mind. the fact that Ozzy immediately began rehearsals with another guitarist upon returning to England. So Ozzy hires Randy Rhoads the night before he leaves from England. He leaves for England and immediately starts practicing with another guitarist after telling Randy Rhoads he was hired. Okay.
He's
So
probably
he
too drunk
begins.
to remember.
Right. I know. That was the problem. Okay, so he's rehearsing with another guitarist upon returning to England and did not even mention Rhoads until after that guitarist had been fired. So he's rehearsing with this guy and he finally fires him. Then he remembers Rhoads, okay? Anyway, we'll move on. It's just too ridiculous. Over the next
Indeed.
couple of days following the audition, Rhoads, Osbourne, Strum, and drummer Frankie Banali jammed together in Los Angeles before Osbourne returned to England. Disillusioned with Quiet Riot's inability to land an American recording deal at the time that he auditioned, they didn't have a recording deal yet. Rhoads discussed with his mother the possibility of joining an already established band. When she asked him if he would accept an offer like this one, he replied, "Of course." Upon returning to England, Osbourne was introduced in a pub, imagine that, to a former Rainbow bassist, Bob Daisley, by a Jet Records employee named Arthur Sharp. And the pair hit it off and decided to work together. Unhappy with the guitarist they were initially working with, Osbourne mentioned to Daisley he had recently met a talented young guitarist in Los Angeles by the name of Randy Rhoads. The new group management intended to keep the lineup all British and was reluctant to hire an unknown American guitarist. I can understand that. Let's stay all British, right? Okay, but Randy Rhoads flew to England only to return home a couple of days later, being turned away by English customs at the Heathrow airport. He didn't have proper paperwork, so he got sent home. When he didn't have the necessary work permit, a representative from Jet Records was dispatched to clear the matter up, but he never arrived. What the hell's wrong with these guys? He never arrived to clear the matter up, right? Okay, so Rhoads spent the night in a holding cell before being handcuffed and put on a plane back to the United States the next day. Osbourne subsequently called him up to apologize, and arrangements were made for Rhoads to return to England with the proper paperwork. Rhoads flew to England on November 27th, 1979, met with Osbourne at Jet Records offices in London. The trio traveled by train to Osbourne's home, Bulrush Cottage. Excuse me, I got to get a drink.
You're fine. You're doing great.
Okay.
I'm listening.
Okay.
You're doing great.
So they returned to Bulrush Cottage, Ozzy's home, okay, which also has the rehearsal space. It was here that Rhoads lived with Osbourne and his then wife Thelma and their two children during the first weeks in England. Years later, Osbourne said in his autobiography that he could not understand why a musician as talented as Rhoads wanted to get involved with such a bloated alcoholic wreck like himself. At least he tells it like it is, So after a short search, former Uriah Heep drummer Lee Kerslake completed the new band and the band was known as Blizzard of Oz. Okay, the group headed into the studio, due to the level of freedom allowed by Osbourne and Daisley. His work with Quiet Riot had been criticized as being dull, and it did not rely on what he liked to do, some classical scales or arrangements. Propelled by Rhoads' neoclassical guitar work, Blizzard of Oz proved an instant hit with rock fans, particularly in the U.S. Okay, they released the singles, Mr. Crowley, Crazy Train. Mr. Crowley is in the key of D minor, Crazy Train F sharp minor. Osbourne said years later, one day Randy came to me and he said that, most heavy metal songs are never played in the same key. All music reviewer Steve Huey described Crazy Train's main guitar riff And I love that absolutely that riff and try to play it myself, you know. And I mean just the riff, not the
Yeah.
solos or anything like that. Okay, but they described Crazy Train's main riff as a classic, making use of the full minor scale in a way not seen since Richie Blackmore's heyday with Deep Purple. I
Huh.
thought that was really interesting. Crazy
Yeah.
Train and Mr. Crowley placed 9th and 28th, respectively, on Guitar World's 100 Greatest Guitar Solos Readers Poll. Crazy Train placed 51 on Rolling Stone's Classic Guitar Songs of All Times list. So that's pretty damn good for their first outing, you know?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Diary of a Madman. We'll go into that in a little more detail. Following the UK tour, okay, the band recorded another album, Diary of a Madman, in December of 81. Rhoads was voted Best New Talent by the readers of Guitar Player magazine and voted Best Heavy Metal Guitarist by the
I
readers of the
do.
UK-based Sounds magazine. At about this time, Rhoads was reunited with Dubrow for a one-off Quiet Riot show at the Whiskey A Go-Go in West Hollywood during a brief trip home. Rhoads was subsequently warned by manager Sharon, later to be Sharon Osbourne, not to do such a thing again. I mean, she was a kick-ass manager, let me tell you. Okay, during a break before leaving for the first UK tour, both Kerslake and Daisley were suddenly fired by Sharon. Before Sharon Osbourne, once again, she was just the manager, but she fired both of them. Okay, the band's manager, Ozzy's future wife, for the U.S. tour, ex Black Oak, Arkansas drummer Tommy Aldridge and bassist Rudy Sarzo, who had been Rhoads' bandmate in Quiet Riot, were hired. Diary of a Madman was released soon after in October 81. And since Kerslake and Daisley were already out of the band, Aldridge and Sarzo's names and photos appeared on the album sleeve. Okay. Disputes over royalties, performance, and other things appeared. Intellectual property rights became a source of future court battles. Kerslake has maintained that Rhoads almost left Ozzy Osbourne's band in late 1981 due to his displeasure with the firing of himself and Daisley.
Hmm.
He didn't want to go on tour with Osbourne. He told him we were thrown out. He said we were going to leave the band as they did not want to leave as they wanted did not want to leave us behind. I told him to be stupid, but thanks for the sentiment, the drummer recalled later. Well, that whole
Wow.
thing that barely makes sense there. Around the time, Rhoads remarked to Osbourne, bandmates Aldridge and Sarzo, and friend Kelly Garney that he was considering leaving rock for a few years to earn a degree in classical guitar at UCLA, which was where his mother got her music degree. In the 1991 documentary film Blame Me, Osbourne confirmed Rhoads' desire to earn the degree and stated that he did not believe had he had lived, he did not believe Rhoads would have stayed in his band. Friend and ex Quiet Riot bassist Garney has speculated in interviews that if Rhoads had continued to play rock, he might have gone the route of more keyboard driven rock, which had become popular through the 80s. While on tour with Osbourne, Rhoads would seek out classical guitar tutors for lessons wherever possible. That's kind of
Sorry.
amazing. I mean, the guy just wanted to keep learning, you know. At the time of his death, Rhoads had already made the decision to part ways with Osbourne once his contractual obligations had been fulfilled. There's always that little thing, you know. Though he had a good relationship with Osbourne, the vocalist's constant drug and alcohol abuse made day-to-day life on tour difficult for the members of his band. As the Diary of Madman U.S. tour progressed, Osbourne would often refuse to perform due to the lingering after effects of his previous night's excesses, and only Sharon could talk him onto the stage. Many shows were simply canceled, and Rose grew tired of this unpredictability. Well, who can blame him, you know? The final straw came when a plan was announced in February 1982 by Osbourne's management and record label to record a live album of Black Sabbath songs at the Toronto Maple Leaf record label, um, at the Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens later that year. Rhoads and bandmate Tommy Aldridge felt that they had established themselves as recording artists, and they regarded an album of cover songs to be a step backwards. I can see that. And they regarded an album cover of songs as a step, cover songs as a step backwards. Okay. And professionally, thus, they refused to participate in the planned live recording. Osbourne actually viewed that decision as a betrayal. Okay. And of course, his relationship and Rhoads just was really becoming strained. Already drinking heavily, Osbourne escalated his drinking and began to tear the band apart. At one point, he drunkenly fired the entire band, including Rhoads, though he later had no memory of doing so. Okay, had no memory of doing so. He began taunting Rhoads with claims that the likes of Frank Zappa, Gary Moore were willing to replace him on the proposed live album. Osbourne's behavior soon convinced Rhoads to leave the band. He grudgingly agreed to perform on the live album with the stipulation, um, you know, that he was going to leave the band after they were done. Okay, after fulfilling that last contractual obligation to Jet Records, which consisted actually of one more studio album after the live. Okay, the proposed live album was scrapped upon the guitarist's sudden death, of course. Weeks later, though the plan was quickly resurrected with the release of "Speak of the Devil" in November. Okay, so we're going to move on now to Randy Rhoads' death. Okay, we've covered his life with Quiet Riot, and in particular the two albums with Ozzy Osbourne and his friendship and what turned out to be a bad thing at the end. But okay, so Randy played his last show on Thursday, March 18th, 1982 at the Knoxville Civic Coliseum. The next day, the band was heading by bus to a festival in Orlando, Florida called Rock Super Bowl 14. Osbourne recalls his final conversation with Rhoads that night on the bus involved the guitarist admonishing him over his heavy drinking. Okay, he was just ripping on Ozzy for his drunkenness and what that had done to the band. Okay, the last thing Rhoads said to him that night was, "You'll kill yourself. One of these days you'll kill yourself." Okay. After driving much of the night, the bus stopped at the Flying Baron Estates, which was a mansion in Leesburg, Florida, to fix a malfunction in their air conditioning unit. While Osbourne remained asleep on the property owned by the Calhoun brothers, the tour bus company. Okay, it was the guys that owned this mansion owned the tour bus company also. There was an airstrip with helicopters, small planes. Without permission, tour bus driver and private pilot Andrew Aycock took a single-engine Beechcraft F-35. And I got to tell you, the Beechcraft F-35 was a dream airplane. I mean, I've got a pilot's license myself, and I've had some actually much lesser planes than the Beechcraft F-35. But I had a great time. But he took the Beechcraft F-35 without permission. He took keyboardist Don Airy and tour manager Jake Duncan, okay, with him as passengers. Now, to me, even though I was a private pilot, I hated sitting in the back seat. I wanted to be somewhere where I could grab the controls, right? So why these guys just oh, okay, let's go, buddy. Okay, so he took him up in the F-35, the Beechcraft. The first flight, Aycock took keyboardist Don Airy, tour manager Jake Duncan, as I already mentioned, with him as passengers. During his first flight, Duncan later revealed that Aycock buzzed the bus in an attempt to wake drummer Tommy Aldridge. The group then landed, and a second flight soon took to the air with Rhoads and makeup artist Rachel Youngblood aboard. Okay. Though afraid of flying, Rhoads wanted to take some aerial photos of the countryside for his mother. He had tried unsuccessfully to coast bassist Rudy Sarzo to join him on the flight. Damn, Rudy, you got lucky. How often do we hear stories like that? Sarzo chose to get some extra sleep in instead and stayed on the bus. During the second flights, more attempts were made to buzz the tour bus, meaning coming really close, trying to scare everybody, including your passengers, uh, but botched the third attempt at buzzing the bus. At about 10 a.m., after being in the air for approximately 5 minutes, one of the plane's wings clipped the top of the tour bus. Okay. Uh, the plane then severed the top of a pine tree, crashed into the garage of a nearby mansion, bursting into flames. Rhoads was killed instantly, as was Aycock, the pilot, and Youngblood. All of the three bodies were burned beyond recognition, and Rhoads was identified by dental records and personal jewelry only. According to Sharon Osbourne, who was asleep in the bus and awoke by the crash, they were all just in little bits. It was body parts everywhere. Boy, that's horrific, man. Keyboardist Don Airy was the only member of the band to witness the crash, as the rest were still asleep in the bus. In his account, he explained that he was standing beside the bus taking photos that he planned to give to Rhoads later. He told of seeing a struggle in the cockpit between Rhoads and the pilot, Aycock. Okay, Rhoads and Aycock in the cockpit. They were approaching the bus seconds before the crash. He gave the following eyewitness account. I had my camera and I was taking photos of the plane to give to Randy afterwards. I had my telephoto lens on, and I could tell that there was some sort of struggle going on inside the plane. The wings were rapidly tipping from one side to the next, at one point almost becoming completely perpendicular, one wing straight up, one wing straight down. That's how you stall a plane, especially at low altitude. The wings were rapidly flipping from side to side, at one point becoming perpendicular, no more than 6 feet off the ground. That's when I put down my camera, saw the plane right in front of me. I quickly crouched to avoid getting hit, looked over my shoulder, and watched it clip the bus, crash into a tree, and explode on impact into the garage. As the band members on board the bus were all shaken from their bunks by the impact and tried to figure out what had happened, bassist Sarzo recalls sidestepping broken glass in his bare feet, looking through the gaping hole in the bus to see tour manager Jake Duncan outside, rocking back and forth on the ground, screaming, "They're gone! They're gone!" Drummer Tommy Aldridge took a fire extinguisher from the bus, ran toward the crash site in a vain attempt to put out the fire. Tour manager Duncan, who had been on board, in the first flight, explained that although he was convinced about the pilot's behavior, there was no sense of foreboding. It all seemed so innocent when we arrived this morning. Andy offered Dawn and me to take us up. I must admit, it got a bit hairy while we were up when he started buzzing the bus, trying to wake Tommy up. But after a few attempts, we just landed, and that was it. Rhoads was afraid of flying, and Youngblood had a bad heart. Rhoads originally had no intentions of getting in the plane. Duncan explained how the guitarist ended up on the doomed flight. Well, right after landing, Andy came up to me and told me that he was going to take Rachel up for a ride, and that being aware of her heart condition, he assured me it was going to just take it easy, circle the property a couple of times, not pull any crazy stunts. So when Randy heard that, he decided to join them and take some aerial shots. Okay, so until I read that, I really didn't know what all went down and just how horrific it was. I knew he had died in a plane crash, but I didn't know there was so burned, you couldn't tell who anybody was. So let me just touch base quickly on the reaction to that crash. Rhoads' longtime girlfriend, Jody Raskin, was in her car when she recalls hearing a block of songs from Blizzard of Oz on the radio before the DJ announced the accident and the news that Rhoads had been killed. She was so distraught. She was too distraught to continue driving. Uh, when close friend and future Quiet Riot drummer Frankie Banali heard the news, he frantically got in touch with Rudy Sarzo to make sure he was all right. He immediately sensed that Sarzo was having a hard time continuing without Rhoads. So Black Sabbath was also touring the U.S. at the time and heard the news on the radio that members of Osbourne's band had been killed in a plane crash. According to bassist Geezer Butler, whose memoirs Into the Void I'm currently reading. I've been saying that for a while. I'm not reading it very fast, although it is a good book. Once I get in bed and start reading, I'm not long for this world. According to bassist Geezer Butler, they panicked as they didn't know if Ozzy had been one of the casualties or not. They quickly contacted Osbourne's management to find out what had happened. In the hours following the crash, band members called loved ones to assure them that they were safe. As news reports hadn't yet named the victims, Sarzo found a church near the hotel, and they began taken to and went inside to pray. The church was empty aside from one man up at the front of the church, crying uncontrollably near the altar. Sarzo was moved by the overwhelming grief this man was dealing with. Eventually, the man cried out, "Why? Why?" And Sarzo realized it was Ozzy Osbourne. Wow, that's heavy.
It is pretty heavy, yeah.
Yeah. So when fellow guitarist Eddie Van Halen learned about the crash, he sensed immediately that the pilot had to have been fucked up when it happened, saying in an early '82 radio interview, "You don't fly that low and smash into a crew bus and then hit a house." The pilot was jerking off. That's just plain stupidity. And I feel sorry for Randy. And that's how I would have thought too. You don't do that. I mean, turning that plane up on wings end vertically 6 feet off the ground. I mean, whether they hit the bus or not, they were probably all going to die. I mean, the wings are no longer, no longer creating flight anymore, and that plane is about to go right into the ground regardless. Okay, so Ozzy Osbourne later admitted that Aycock, the pilot, had been doing cocaine all night prior to the crash. It was confirmed after the autopsy Aycock had tested positive for cocaine. Rhoads toxology test revealed only nicotine. The NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, which investigates every plane crash, determined that Aycock's aviation medical certificate had expired. He wasn't even legal, okay? And I'm going to tell you something right now. For every plane that you can fly within the previous 90 days, you had to have flown and did so many practice landings. And if you exceed that previous 90 days, you have to go back up to with an instructor to certify that you're qualified to fly. So this guy wasn't even current. And he's flying a plane that he'd probably never even flown before, too. It was reported that Aycock had been the pilot in another fatal crash in the United Arab Emirates 6 years earlier. Sharon had been aware of the prior crash, but hadn't informed tour manager Jake Duncan or anyone else of Aycock's history, okay? In the moments after the crash, she reportedly admonished tour manager Duncan for allowing their people into a plane with a pilot who had been awake and using drugs all night, telling him, "Don't you know that man had already killed one of Calhoun's kids in a helicopter crash?" Wow. What a disaster.
That is sad.
Oh my God. Rhoads' funeral was held at the First Lutheran Church in Burbank, California. Rhoads was only 5'7". He weighed 105 pounds. Okay. So anyway, that's really all I want to say about this. It's almost getting more difficult to talk about right now. I mean, this whole story here at the end was absolutely horrendous. Okay, so We're gonna start bringing some chat in. Okay, Chris, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah. A lot of that story sounds so familiar to, like, for example, I mentioned in the chat earlier, like Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
helicopter, like Eric Clapton was offered to get on it. Jeff Healey was offered to get on it.
right.
Jimmy Vaughn. They all felt the bad vibe, and that they all knew that it was revealed later they knew the
Yeah.
pilot was also partying with them. But then,
You know what? It also sounds a little bit like what they call the day the music died, when Buddy Holly, died, and Richie Valens and the Big Bopper, and who was it that was supposed to be on the plane with them? It was Waylon Jennings, I think.
Yeah.
He
It
lost.
was.
He lost. They drew straws or something,
Yeah.
and he wound up getting on the freezing bus, and it was colder than shit, and the heater in the bus didn't work. And one of the guys that were getting to take the plane looked at him, and I can't remember who it was, damn it, looked at him and said, "I hope you freeze to death." And Waylon answered back, "And I hope you crash." And that was the last thing he said to this guy. And he regretted it for the rest of his life ever saying that. But it
careful,
reminds me of, yeah, oh my God. Can you imagine?
Hey, can I add?
Aviation is scary. Go ahead.
Add something to what we were talking about between Eddie Van Halen and Randy Rhoads. I was watching a video earlier before I joined, and they were saying that Eddie Van Halen, was caught in a record store in the same area that Randy Rhoads lived in, buying the Diary of a Madman CD so he could keep, or album at that point,
Oh,
so
no
he could keep
kidding.
track of what Randy Rhoads was doing.
That's great. I love stories like that. People keeping track of one another.
Oh,
That's
because
that's totally awesome.
Eddie
Okay.
was asked one time, everything he knows he learned from me after Rhoads
Oh,
died.
yeah, I know. I heard that more than once. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna back up a little bit and get a little more of the comments in here. Got Dan Goucher. We've got Vinyl Gorilla Records. Thank you guys. Zip Pearl Vance. I was on Vance's watching Vance's show this morning. Only the best. VGR, laughing out loud. Vinyl Gorilla Records, yeah. Oh no, Dusty Spins. Hi, Royce and crew. How you doing, Dusty? Good to see you, bro.
Hi, Dusty.
Okay, still have a stream circulating if anybody else would like to join us. Now we're getting into that section of the show where I kind of shut up a little bit. I've kind of gone through, what the show is about, and at this point, we just kind of all, get into the conversation, get into the chat, and just enjoy the rest of our time together.
Hey, Royce, have you ever heard the story?
It's interesting, Dr. Rick.
About it's either Eddie Van Halen or Joe Satriani. One of them was the guitar teacher for the other, was it not? I thought it was Joe Satriani who taught Eddie Van Halen.
That's the way I would probably think of it, because Eddie Van Halen, he took guitar lessons, but I never ever heard that it was from Joe Satriani. And I also learned that Eddie really didn't know how to read music. He had one of these gifts where he could hear it once and play it, and they thought he could read music when he was at his lessons. But he would hear the instructor play it, and then he could play it. I mean, it was just immaculate. But now what's interesting is we had that show last week where they're putting a tour together, with Jason Bonham, Joe Satriani, original, Van Halen bassist Michael Anthony, and Sammy Hagar. Sammy Hagar is putting a tour together in 2024.
Yep.
A Van Halen tribute tour. So when you mentioned Satriani, it just reminded me of that. That was actually last week's show, and that would be a good concert. I'd go see that in a heartbeat.
For sure.
So no, Satriani's great. I've seen Satriani in concert. It was kind of not a tribute to Hendrix, experience Hendrix, where Satriani, Zakk Wylde, oh my God, different guitarists, maybe somebody from Aerosmith. I mean, the list was like just went on and on and on. Just Eric Johnson, all the premier guitar players of our times, excuse me, joined this tour that went on for a couple of years, and the lineup would change a little bit. I got to see it twice because I'm a major Jimi Hendrix fan. I absolutely love Jimi Hendrix. And so I saw it at the Arlington Theater in Santa Barbara, and then just up the road here about 30 minutes at the Avila Blues Festival, an annual festival put on by somebody that I've known for probably 35 years, and I've actually interviewed on the show about his blues festival in Avila. And that was fun. But that lineup had changed a little bit at that point. Buddy Guy had joined. One of the funnest things I heard at the Santa Barbara show was, before Jimi Hendrix was this rock god, he played for all of the soul bands. One of them being the Isley Brothers, and he lived with one of the Isley Brothers for something between 4 and 5 years, and was their guitar player. And Ernie Isley, the son of that Isley brother in the band, it was his turn to play at the Hendrix show, and he says, he goes, Hendrix came to live with our family. He lived with us 4 or 5 years. He used to give me guitar lessons. I'm like, what? I never heard this story before. And all of a sudden, he started playing. He sounded just like Jimi Hendrix, I couldn't believe it. And then what was fun was all these different greats came out and played with their bands, and then they all started coming out and pairing up with one another and just playing Hendrix music. And I'm not exaggerating when I say for years afterward, I said it was the best concert I'd ever seen in my life.
I could definitely see that.
Yeah, it was just amazing. I mean, so many great artists. Google it sometimes, Experience Hendrix, I think it was called, and just look at the lineup, and it doesn't even cover it all. And then it changes. Like every time they moved around, some people would have to drop off and others would join. It was just amazing. Okay, Dan Goucher, incredibly guitarist. Punky Meadows, who played in Angel, so underrated. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know that one. That's cool.
Soupy Cell's sons grew up around the Van Halen brothers, I think. Well, that's funny. Soupy Cells. What a character he was. Oh my God. I spent the whole hour I usually allot for the show talking.
Yeah, same.
I probably chased half the chat off,
Hey, one of the things we were talking about earlier is when Randy Rhoads came into contact with Van Halen, when Van Halen was still called Mammoth.
Mammoth, okay.
And they knew of each other. And then when on one of Van Halen's early tours, I think before their first album was even released, Quiet Riot was the opening act.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting.
So
given that rivalry
started, yeah.
Yeah, given that rivalry, that's just really interesting. I've seen Van Halen in concert. Just once. It was a great show. It was a reunion with David Lee Roth. They played it right here at the Paso Robles Fairground. It was fun. So anyway, that pretty much sums it up. Randy Rhoads, I decided to do this show, first of all, because it ties in so many people I like so much. I like Ozzy Osbourne. I like Eddie Van Halen, and Randy Rhoads was so iconic on those 2 albums with Ozzy, then. And I've been seeing a lot of news about Randy Rhoads lately as I go, as I go on the internet and stuff like that. So these stories are started to pop up about Randy Rhoads, and I started reading them. Then I started reading more, and pretty soon I said to myself, I've just got to do a show on Randy Rhoads. He died so long ago at the age of 25 years old, and it's so tragic too. He didn't even like flying. He didn't really want to go, but the flight before him was, kind of gentle. And this was supposed to be the same thing. Hey, look at this! We got this stranger down here, Michael Nolan, the bottom line. Hey, brother, how you doing? Good to see you. We've been talking Randy Rhoads, Ozzy Osbourne, right. Crazy Train. I was putting
up with it earlier, so it's your turn.
You must have been working on and editing some of your own stuff. I mean, that always always seems to happen because you're so busy. You put so many shows on pretty much daily. But I do have a link if you want to pop on for a few minutes and say hi to everybody. That would be good. We probably won't be on for much longer, but love to have you come on for just a bit and hang out with us for a while. We'll extend it a little longer for you.
Hey, Royce,
if you're interested.
Can I say
Chris?
something? I was going to mention it last week, but we ran out of time. We were
Okay.
talking about Black Sabbath and Ozzy and all the doom and gloom. I saw Black Sabbath on the End Tour in Detroit on Tony Iommi's 72nd birthday.
Okay.
And for the Master of Doom and Gloom, he did pretty good. He had all 20,000 people at the Palace singing happy birthday to Tony Iommi.
Oh, that's
And then
awesome.
Tony Iommi was just holding it together. He was holding it together. Then he turned around and his wife was carrying a cake on stage. And then Tony Iommi turned into a blubbering little girl.
What? Seriously?
Seriously, he started crying on stage. Because he was already emotional when Ozzy had the whole stadium singing happy birthday.
Right.
Then he turned around to his wife, and
I'm telling you, those guys are great. I mean, I'm reading that book, like I said, Geezer Butler's Into the Void, slowly. And I mean, just the stories I'm reading about these guys are just I mean, there's some hilarious stories there. I could make like 5 shows out of that book easily. I mean, I doubt that'll happen, but at least 1, maybe 2. And then you've got all these other books. You've got Ozzy's book. You've got Tony Iommi's book, probably one by Bill Ward, the drummer, as well. I mean, it just goes on, and they all have a book, a memoir, or something out there.
Well, I got a trial membership for Audible, and I just bought Teddy Lee's book, My Effing Life.
Yeah.
I got it for free, so I'm interesting.
Yeah, I saw that. I haven't actually picked it up and looked through it or anything, but I've seen it for sale and read something about it. Yeah, this is interesting what Dan's saying. Ozzy always said Randy didn't drink, swear, barely smoked. He just wanted to practice. I totally respect that. It reminds me of Jimi Hendrix. He'd have parties at whatever pad he was living at, and he'd walk around the house with his unplugged electric guitar and just playing as he was chatting with people and stuff. It's like he almost never put it down. Yeah, Tony Iommi, he is a nice guy, Angela. He was a pretty tough. He could be a tough guy. I mean, I've read some stories already about, he took some boxing when he was younger. Look at this. Look at this.
Hey!
Michael Nolan.
Okay, hi, Michael.
The bottom
Hey,
line. How you
Caitlin.
doing, brother?
Hi, Michael.
Well, like I
Chris?
told, I think it was on Caitlin's stream today. I'm doing well. I can count to 100. I just can't count to Chocula.
Chocula.
Or the sound of one hand clapping.
There's
Right?
got to be an inside joke here.
Actually, that was on James' stream
James, that's right.
before Caitlin got on earlier this morning.
I don't know. Michael got yelled at by
Oh,
York
yeah.
or somebody. James was going, you say, Michael's going, we want Kate. And, like, what? And then York is back there going, yeah, don't ever do that again.
Well, he gave you one hell of an introduction,
right.
and you showed up an hour later. We were all anticipating you.
Well, church, and I have lunch with some friends, but I was having plans to come on after lunch.
Yeah. Good.
And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I'm sure you are.
I don't know if you heard much of the show, but that whole Randy Rhoads story, in particular, the death, was just insanity.
Oh yeah, I was here for the whole show. Oh yeah. That was a complete tragedy. I'll tell you. Yeah, for me, everything. Here's how big of a Randy Rhoads fan I was. Everything that I heard on the radio by him, I was extremely impressed with, and I enjoyed. But there were 2 things I did not do in the 80s. I did not do Ozzy Osbourne as far as buying his stuff. All right. I
Right.
enjoyed his hits. I enjoyed them when
Yeah.
they're on a good FM radio and I'm driving down. I never turned them off. I loved them, you
Right.
know.
Right.
Uh, but I've told you this before, Royce. My biggest complaint with the Ozzy Osbourne solo show is his flamboyance, and I kind of got off of that. Uh, and I got off of Black Sabbath at the same time. So, where was I in the 80s? Well, when see, this is the beginning of the hair bands, and it is the
Oh yeah.
beginning of my first retirement as a professional musician. Okay, so I saw all these hair bands coming in. I hated them. I hated
Right.
them. The only good thing that they signified to me was they were a part of the end of disco. Thank you. Right. So I wasn't a
Right. No,
Scorpions,
they were.
or Black Flag or whoever. What you name them, I don't even know a lot of those bands.
Mm.
But
Poison,
I was
Motley
aware,
Crue.
right? But I was aware of Randy Rhoads, and he was a great, great guitarist. I was
Yeah.
just see during those years, I was really into the Police, the Clash. I was really into some of the more refined music that had more of a. I guess I was craving the good old days of Abbey Road, so I was a big Alan Parsons project fan. And so
Okay.
during those, and then U2 came in, and I followed them. And so the 80s was a bit of a wasteland for me. I liked a lot of the stuff coming over from Britain and hated it almost as fast as it started. So,
It's really interesting to hear you say that. I mean, I was a fan of like Black Sabbath from 70 71. I mean, I had 8 tracks,
right, me too.
8 tracks all the way up, through Sabbath Bloody Sabbath and 8 tracks,
Yeah.
but and of course Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin was like Led Zeppelin, Jimi Hendrix, Black Sabbath, but there were so many bands I don't even have any music of that I listen to a lot, like, well, James Gang, I've recently got a couple of things, but oh god, I mean Uriah Heep and all those great old bands,
Right.
that were real popular that we listened to, and then they just kind of faded away. And I really haven't replaced a lot of that old stuff, but I have a lot of old stuff though. I've bought a lot of old stuff lately, and the
Yeah.
last couple of years, I've bought a lot. But but what the point I really wanted to address is what you were saying about the '80s. It's like I almost took a little hiatus. I wasn't really buying anything anymore. I was so entrenched in all the things that I loved in the late '60s through the early '70s.
Yeah.
The
But there was
culminate.
also great stuff like Men at Work. I
Oh yeah,
loved Men at Work. And what about the Corgis? Everybody's got to learn sometime.
yeah.
Blang,
Okay.
blang. Oh, I loved,
Yeah,
So
no, there was a lot of stuff I listened to on the radio.
yeah, yeah, I liked high production in the
Right.
80s, but not the, I loved Gary Newman, of course, Thomas Dolby. See where my head was at that time?
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, and the glitter hairband look was so fucking fake,
Well, yeah,
and I
oh,
know what
I
it would
know.
take
Yeah.
to look like that, Royce, because just for me to look like this takes hours and hours of preparation, darling. But
Well,
can you believe these guys with, I don't know, Afrocentric perms with golden
well,
locks, glitter sprayed in
no,
their
but
hair?
hey,
Ugh.
I've got the ultimate. I've
What's
got
up,
the ultimate
glitter?
right here. Okay, I've been up since like
Yeah, come
1:30
on.
a.m. Right, and I was
Yeah,
in here and I was watching videos, and I come across a video from my friend Jordan the Lion, who does all these travel videos,
Yeah,
and he was in
yeah,
England.
yeah.
We were in England together and made a video at the flat Harry Nilsson owned that Mama Cass and the drummer for the Who both died at.
Oh
Keith
yeah,
Moon?
yeah,
So
yeah.
we went there and made a little video. We went to the alley where Bob Dylan made a video proving he wasn't cussing in Subterranean Homesick Blues by having placards. And as the words went by, as the words were saying, he'd throw that placard and show, proving there's no cussing here. God damn it! What are you blaming me for cussing for? So anyway, so I was with Jordan the Lion in London, and we were touring rock and roll sites. And so all of a sudden, I come across Jordan the Lion was at the Last Kiss show. And you were so I had to watch it because Jordan did it, right? So I watched
Yeah.
about 45 minutes of the Last Kiss concert at Madison Square Garden. And you know I'm not really a fan of Kiss.
You think
I had a
that's
bunch of
gonna be the
co-hosts.
Last Kiss show, huh?
Okay, I remember
No,
this
no, no.
from that, Michael.
What's really funny?
No, I'm
really
saying
funny,
Gene
You go.
Simmons and Paul Stanley will perform as Kiss after this.
I'm gonna
I'm
tell
How
you
many
what was
times have
funny.
they quit?
Here
You know?
we go.
The
Yep,
last few moments of the show, here was holograms of the band up on the big screen. And I think you nailed that months ago,
Mhm.
that's what we might be seeing down the road.
Oh,
And I'm
yes.
thinking you may have been
I did a
right.
whole set of videos on that possibility.
That's exactly right.
Well, you
That's
know
exactly
what,
right.
Royce? That's
They
the
may already
whole
be
thing of
working on that.
my channel is to pay homage to the great music we grew up with, to
Right.
help preserve the respect for that music. But
Absolutely.
also, my channel is devoted to fight in any way that I can by my voice reaching as many people as I can. And through the
Right.
comments
I
in
know what
my
you're gonna say.
channel, we become a voice. You've heard it. We are a tribe. But
Oh yeah, we are a tribe. Yeah.
there are monsters out there to slay, fellow tribalites. All right, there are monsters that endanger the preservation, at least, of our art called classic rock. Okay,
Right.
and just some of them are the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and any other award show on the planet, right? Using backing tracks, okay, and lip syncing. Kiss, you. And then, as well as the lack of airplay that new bands like Dirty Honey, all
I
right,
love Dirty Honey.
and Rival Sons and the band Dorothy, they get no airplay, right? Dirty Honey's got a brand new freaking album out. It's great.
I remember that.
All
band.
right.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Band. Yeah.
But nobody's, crawling up their asses to give them any airplay, right? And the
Right,
lessening of airplay for certain bands. Have you noticed prior to the release of the Hackney Diamonds album that the only airplay in your area regarding the Stones would be stuff like Sympathy for the classic 70s hits?
Oh yeah.
And then
absolutely.
all of a sudden Hackney Diamonds is out, and do they
Right.
play it? A little bit, but all their classic hits all of a sudden on fire now. All right. This is
right.
This is bad for rock and roll. There are demons that are attacking our art form. And, it's time to make our voices clear, right? Because everybody says, well, it's just a TV show, and it's the feeling of rock and roll. It's an indescribable flabbergasted to you.
Well, AI became a big conversation during the now and then recreation, and I remember we had this conversation about AI,
and AI is another one. Thank you.
I mentioned that there was a simulation of a Drake song. Everybody knew it wasn't really Drake, and it still got 1 million hits, 1 million views, knowing it wasn't Drake. It just purely artificial intelligence created. Copied his voice, copied his style, put it out there. This is not
Let's
Drake,
give the goddamned robots Yeah, let's give the goddamn robots the power to create. Now we're children, and we can listen to Mama and Daddy Robot to tell us what is
Well, you know,
right to listen to. Fuck you.
you know what really,
You know?
what really, right? What really stood out to me watching that Kiss final concert.
I
Let's
did.
see, Royce, Greta Van Fleet show, please. Okay, a Greta Van Fleet show, Michael. You ready?
Yes. Oh
Okay.
yes. I'm up to that one, Royce. Any day.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
love
Okay.
Greta Van Fleet.
Yeah. You know, they're really growing on me too. What
Yeah, they're
really
Oh,
stood
really
out?
good. Work loves them.
What
They
what
love
what
them.
really what really stood out watching this Kiss show is I could see how, you know, a lot of my friends, young, mostly younger, that are huge Kiss fans started at about 9, 10, 12 years old. Their parents took them, you know, and that
mhm.
was just at that age, you know, the age of superheroes, the age of Marvel comics and all that stuff. And I remember reading a post by a girl one time who actually tied those two together just really, really well, you know. And I just told her I completely agreed with her. But when you watch them, first of all, you've got Eric Singer, the drummer, who's been with them since
25
like
years.
25 years now. Now he's puts on a hell of a show, and he's super super talented. In fact, he's starting to show up in these polls of greatest drummers and things like that. He's excellent, man. He'll twirl this stick, then he'll twirl this stick, and at the same time, he's playing the freaking drums and doing a damn good job of it. He's really talented. They did something that was kind of cool. He was in the back, and they made multiple images of him, and they all look the same, and they all look natural. And so you're watching him, you know, on 6 different places playing, one stacked above the other. But he's a talent. I have nothing but respect for him. Then you've got Tommy Thayer. I mean, I think he's a decent guitar
Oh,
player.
he's
But
awesome.
what's
Did
the,
everybody
yeah.
have their wristband being part of the light show?
No,
Nope.
I didn't see anything
No,
like that.
Oh,
no, no wristbands.
okay. Well,
But
there is
you'll
hope
have, you
for
know,
salvation then.
you'll have Paul Stanley, who's the front man, and he dances around kind of in a feminine way, and the crowd seems to
No,
really
I
love
love
it.
it. I mean, him.
Yeah, and
That's what I'm
pretends
saying.
to really
The crowd,
sing.
He
right,
was singing.
and pretends to really play the guitar. You know, it's
Yeah,
like
Oh gosh, I'm the
lip
actor
sync.
now.
every few minutes he'll hit the strings 3 times, and that's it. You can't even
Yeah.
distinguish it hardly.
Mm.
And then you've got Gene Simmons, and every once in a while you can hear his bass lines, but they're not like in your face. Like I've heard some powerful
I
bass lines
differ.
on some songs recently.
I
Huh?
differ. I differ. His
Okay,
bass
then
guitar
that's
As
was.
far
fine.
as
I mean, I'll
as
tell you
far as
what.
I
There
know,
are
Gene Simmons is legit.
He is
As far
legit.
as his bass playing, as far as vocals, there's
yeah.
doubt for both him and Paul Stanley, and most definitely for
Yeah,
Paul
well, he
Stanley.
sang
He's been caught
he
doing
sang
it.
some songs,
Yes, more than once.
and his
Yeah,
voice isn't the kind of voice that you'd think is some kind of virtuoso. It's, you know, his costume. He's a big gruff guy, and he's spitting blood and everything like that. And his
yeah,
voice actually kind of goes with all of that. You know?
yeah. Well,
Anyway, I hope I'm not
it's all
offending
a
a bunch of Kiss
business.
fans.
I did a
I
whole video.
I
I was going to say I did a
I
whole
would have
video
fun.
on Ace and why he didn't play, and it was all a matter of money. And you know what? Gene Simmons saying they got a hold of Ace and Peter to show up, and Ace is saying that never happened. That never happened. So
Well,
it is all
yeah.
about the mighty dollar. Because Ace said,
Oh yeah.
give me $1 million and I'm there. And they
Give me
said,
$1 million.
well, what are we going to do with 2 spacemen? He said, hey, I'm a good looking guy. And this time he said, give me $250,000 and I'm there. He can have the
Right.
spacesuit, you know? But
Right.
no,
Right.
no. So, everything
Well,
out of Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley's mouth ain't gold, folks. I mean, I've caught
no,
them
but
lying just between themselves.
the other thing I wanted to say though is after watching this last night, I could see where I could have fun watching them, you know, because it is a tremendous show that gets put on. I mean, it's just crazy. Crazy in a fun way is what I'm trying to say. And you know, when we were in England, and I was talking about Jordan the Lion, and we did a couple of things. I was there. My son-in-law was also there, married to my oldest daughter at the time. Well, still are. And Eric Singer is a very close friend of his. So we walked over to the hotel where Kiss was staying, and they were there on their end of the road tour, the previous end of the road tour, pre-COVID. And Eric came down and met us, and we walked around London together for a while. And he goes, well, I better get headed back. We got a lot of stuff to do before the show tonight. And of course, my daughter and her husband were going to the show. And Eric says to me, well, we'll see you guys tonight. And it's like, well, I wish I was seeing them tonight. I wasn't going. But anyway, make a long story short, that we got back to the hotel, and Eric got on the phone, and he turned to my son-in-law and said, hey, you've just been invited up by Gene. Gene wants to talk to you. And so and Stefan says, really? And he goes, yeah, Gene invited you up. He wants to just say hi. So he got to go up and talk to Gene Simmons and stuff for a while. And then they went later that night to see the show itself. So anyway, yeah, I think Eric's a great guy. I think he's a great drummer. And I mean, there's some talent in that band. And you can see, I mean, Michael, if you were taken to see Kiss when you were 12 years old, you know.
Oh, yeah, Royce. I've told you. Yeah.
Totally different experience, you know.
Yeah, I told you. I was too old for them when they came out. Right, you know, right. I was already kind of making transitions.
Yeah. I was listening to. I was already into Led Zeppelin 3 by then, and all the Hendrix studio albums and all that other stuff. And when these guys came along, it was like, what the hell? I just never paid any attention to them.
Yeah, and you also know that I have respect for them. They put out one or two pretty damn great albums. With the exception of their biggest hit, Beth, they've done some really great records. I can't stand that single. Never liked the song, but and I believe they belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Absolutely.
You know, no problem at all. It's not like I hate Kiss.
Well, when I say that I was never a fan, that doesn't mean they weren't any good at all. And what's wrong with the people listening to them? I was just into other things, and there was a whole bunch of those other things that were prioritized over Kiss.
And I was already into Alice Cooper, so my freak was already on, brother.
I was listening to Alice Cooper when I was a junior in high school.
Yeah, you know, I mean, when I first heard Halo of Flies did it for me.
That's a good one.
That one, I heard that song and I go, that's my kind of freak, man. I love that. I can get that freaky.
Well, you know, Randy Rhoads was mesmerized by Alice Cooper.
Yeah, so I don't have any. Yeah, I don't have any problem with Kiss presenting. You're right. I probably would have fell for them if I had been 12 when they came out, because Royce, like you, I was a major Marvel fan, and I collected Avenger comics. Okay. Among others, you know. But yeah, I would have fallen for that. But I think I would have outgrown it rather fast too. I don't know. It's hard to say.
For nostalgic sake, though, you might 25 years later want to go see a concert that's around you or something, you know?
Yeah. Yep. I hear it, and I get the fandom. I really do. It's just that if they were really listening to the Kiss Army, Ace and Peter would have been up there that night, and they would have been well paid for their show. Yeah, and I think that was a big disservice, because to me, Royce,
to the fans,
to me, I'm just saying, as a mild Kiss fan, Kiss were the original four members. There can be no other members beyond the four. To me, they're one of those bands they're one of those bands that, like the Beatles, you know, you gotta have Ringo. You gotta have Ringo. And to me, no Peter Criss, no Ace Frehley, that's a letdown, you know?
Yeah, I saw Ace a year and a half ago open for Alice Cooper right here, just up the street.
Oh, and you know,
Yeah,
the more I
that was
read
fun.
about Ace, I really like the guy. You know, he's a contradiction in terms, most definitely, but he just says what's on his fucking mind. Thank you. I like that.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And he doesn't go preaching at his concerts. He leaves that for the interviews, you know?
But it's gonna be interesting going forward to see
I like Paul Stanley preaching.
how these former band members, you know, what take they're gonna, you know, are they gonna try to do tribute tours, Kiss tribute tours, and I'm not sure what Eric Singer is gonna do, but I think Eric Singer is a great enough drummer. He'll get all kinds of offers from good bands.
I agree.
Oh, for those two, there's still future for whatever they want to be a part of.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. You know, now if they go, see, there's so many fucking rumors about this band. If they go the way that Gene Simmons talks, then there will be a Kiss 2 incarnation of the band, and maybe they'll use Tommy and Singer to, you know, kind of transcend, do a transition type of thing. I think that's the most likely thing if Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons are really done. They like
they are. I listened to Gene do an interview after the performance, and based from everything that Gene's been saying, he's done and Paul is done. Because according to Gene, Paul doesn't know how much time he has left in this world, and he'll spend it with his family.
Mm-hmm.
Which I respect too. So
absolutely.
Well, yeah. I mean, if it's time, God, I always say, man, go out on top.
And they did, in my opinion.
I don't think they're at their top, though. You know, that was years ago. That was decades ago. And so they've become one of the, you know, it's just like Foreigner. They are and have been on their farewell tour, right?
Yeah.
I just saw an article where they added yet another set of shows, and it's going to tour with who? Another band. Styx. Okay, so here we go again. How many times this year, just in my videos, have I reported Pilsen and Hansen and what they've been saying, and this is really it, and then pointing out that they've said that before? I called it, man. I knew these fools weren't done.
These bands like Thin Lizzy, I mean, Dan Goucher, I mean, I don't know if you want to answer that question, Michael.
I'm not familiar with the situation with Thin Lizzy, brother.
I was a fan of Thin Lizzy, as well as the band you just mentioned moments ago, but it's like a lot of them I haven't listened to in a long time, and I don't have any of their albums or anything right now.
I mean, I'm aware of their hits. Kind of like the same way I am of Kiss's hits and everything. I actually bought their live album, you know, but not other than that, I never bought anything from them. I had just heard cuts off of it, and I go, yeah, that's good rock and roll. They were a good. To me, they're like America's greatest garage band. You know, none of them. Ace is kind of out there. He's pretty good. He's the top in the band to me as far as musicianship. And Gene wound up to be a solid, damn good bassist, actually. But then he started talking and comparing himself to McCartney, and I was laughed out of the interview. But you know, he is a good, solid bassist. He's no Paul McCartney. You know, he's not fit to tie Paul McCartney's shoelaces. You know, not as far
French,
as
French
influence.
vinyl addict.
Hey,
No, I was just saying hi to. Check out this next comment from Dusty Spins. Money talks, bullshit walks. Gene's
Oh,
greed and narcissism
Dusty.
will not let Kiss end.
I agree.
Gene,
I agree.
Gene's by far the wealthiest member of the band.
Hey, maybe
I
he's
don't
just
know.
hiring.
I think I can't.
Maybe he's just
I
going to spend
don't
his money on.
necessarily think that.
Go ahead. I was just going to say maybe Gene's just
Yeah.
going to spend his money on an AI hologram machine, and Kiss will go on forever.
Well, okay, no offense or anything. It's not. It's not a hologram. It's not a hologram.
Not now, but it could be in the future. I mean, Gene's
I don't see them doing that. They're sticking with the whole AI thing.
Well,
what's your rank, by the way, Caitlin?
Huh?
What's your rank?
In the Kiss Army.
In the Kiss Army.
Better than yours.
You're talking like an officer, honey.
Dan, if I'm not mistaken,
Caitlin's top brass. Caitlin's top brass.
Let's go kick you in the shins.
Kiss Commandant. Dan Goucher is talking about $100 million musicians, but
you
the
started
last time I
you are such a do or die fan.
I think he was
sorry,
closer
Royce.
to,
yes, I am. Darn proud of you. Sorry, Royce. Keep going. Keep going. I'll shut up. Go. Huh.
No. I'm just Gene Simmons by far the wealthiest member of Kiss. He's from 450 to 500 million is his net worth.
Yeah, I could probably
not happy at the MSG shows.
I could probably get by on that, couldn't you, Royce? I think probably.
Yeah, right. Well, that's what I was saying too. I saw that at the end and stuff, and it was like they can do anything they want to do. I don't know what the fans will buy. We had a huge Kiss fan on a few weeks back, Angelo Lucetto. He's a police officer back east, and he absolutely loves Kiss. And we asked him, you were there, Michael, and somebody asked him, I don't know if it was one of us, would you still go see Kiss without Gene and Paul? And he thought for a minute, He goes, no Gene, no Paul, no Kiss.
Yeah, I do vaguely remember that comment. Yeah.
So I don't know what. I mean, I think they'll be buying stuff for a long time. They'll be buying albums. Maybe I'll bet all of these last concerts were videoed. They'll have a whole box sets of videos being released.
The making of edition. Yeah. The behind the scenes features.
Yeah, Dan, I get it. It was a conservative guess. Just throwing it out there. 100 million is a lot of money. You give me a $500,000, I won't work anymore.
I could probably get by on a quarter.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Lord.
Well, okay, folks. Hey, Michael, thanks for hopping on here at the end. Too bad you didn't come on earlier, but I talked for so long. I tried to get through it quicker, but there's so many books that have been written since Randy Rhoads' death, and there's so much stuff that's been done about it that you just, like I said, I'm just going to pick a line and try to run through it quickly from beginning to end, and then go back and look at some, for instances. And before I knew it, the whole time was gone.
Well, out of all of the finger tappers, the dive bomber guitarists, him and Van Halen impressed me the most. Satriani, maybe. To me, that with all the modes and stuff, me and blues, there's got to be a basic blues approach to the music to kind of grab me personally. It doesn't mean I don't love some of the stuff, and great Van Halen singles and stuff like that. Right, they're impressive. I loved it. Just it wasn't enough to make me a hardcore fan.
Right.
of that style of guitar playing, anyway.
Right.
But I fully admit, you know, Van Halen, Rhoads, Satriani, those are the top three that comes to mind for me.
Yeah.
They were masters of what they did do, man. And it was new, it was exciting, and it was the last time, really, I think, that the Guitar Hero was around.
Well, I was mentioning earlier that the Hendrix tribute shows that went around for a couple of years, and I mean all the amazing guitar. Satriani was one of them. Buddy Guy was one of them. Johnny Lane, Kenny Wade Shepherd. I mean, the list was just one of the guitar players from Aerosmith was there.
Joe,
Eric Johnson. I mean. No, it
Joe
actually
Perry?
wasn't Joe. I can't remember the guy's name.
Or was it Brad? I bet it was
no,
Brad.
it wasn't Joe Perry.
I bet it was Brad.
Yeah, Brad Whitford. Yeah, I think that's who it was.
Brad, yeah. He's good. He's a good guitar player.
You know, who really impresses me.
Zach Wilde was there.
Nice.
The guitarist that really impresses me that's out these days, I was a fan from the moment I heard Redemption by Joe Bonamassa.
Oh,
I
that's
would
a good
love
one.
to see that man play. Because he's kind of like.
He comes here fairly frequently, and I haven't seen him yet.
Oh, man, Royce.
Where Alice Cooper's played twice, the Vina Robles Amphitheater. He's been there maybe three times, and I haven't got up there to see him yet.
I have got to see Bonamassa. You know, I've got to see him.
Jump on it, Royce.
Yeah. I gotta catch him the next time for sure.
Oh,
well, the Vampires. There's a rumor going around.
I know he's great. I know he's great. I just haven't done it yet.
No, well, he's gonna be in Europe all next summer into early fall. But I hear there's some big Hollywood Vampire news coming up, so I'm right. I'll keep you posted on that. I'm watching that one.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
if they're touring the U.S., just Denver. Let's go. Just say Denver. I'll round up the posse. Let's go.
Right on. Well, okay, guys. I just want to say, Kate, thank you for jumping in here and helping.
Yeah, no problem.
Chris Elliott, thank you so much. Everybody in the chat, Music Sanctuary, Dusty Spins, Dan.
Dusty.
Oh my God, so many people joined us tonight. The French Vinyl Addict jumped in here. Dr. Rick was here. Man, I mean, there was quite a few people here tonight, and thank you all so much. We had a great time here. Angela was here. Now here I see Michael way up here. I don't know how far up that is. Let's see. We had Davey Strange Name was here. We had a great crew tonight, and so Michael, you were here through the whole show. How come you never jumped on?
Oh, I actually did try to jump on. I was on the backstage, but
oh, really?
I thought what I thought was happening is that you had a different approach, because usually you get through your intro in like 20 minutes at the max, and it was like an hour, and I go, maybe I'm misreading where he's going tonight.
That was unexpected. I had too much information was the thing. I got to keep it where no, that's my fault then.
Oh no, it was fine, Royce. It was a good show.
Well, thank you.
I enjoyed it. Yeah.
It did carry on way too long though. I wasn't trying to turn it into a 3-hour show.
It was fun.
Okay. Well,
how long have we been going? Let's see.
Oh my God.
So about an hour and 45 minutes.
Just about.
Yeah.
We've gone longer.
So I know we're gonna sign off right this very moment.
Hurry.
Okay, guys. Thank you all so much, Chris. Okay, and that's what's happening in Royce's world today.
Bye.
We'll see you all later.
Where on earth, Michael?
Bye.